Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
Welcome to this week's episode of the SoundMoney Sound Principles Podcast. Josh Anderson here alongside Zach Davis. How are you, Zach?
I'm good, Josh. Good to be back.
Man, what a week. This week, as Jerome Powell prepares for his final FOMC meeting, gold at 47.31 did something truly interesting, right? When the DOJ, the Department of Justice, dropped its probe into Jerome Powell, and the Kevin Warsh, confirmation odds jumped to 85%, gold went up, not down. This is like craziness. I say that because, we used to be able to, Zach, kind of predict really easily what would drive gold and silver up based on market news and information. But the whole world seems to just be turned upside down. As this week, we're going to dive into on the Sound Money segment this week, we're going to dive into Jerome Powell's last FOMC meeting. It's actually happening right now as we're meeting right now. And why gold is pricing a new era. We'll just call it the Warsh era, right? Because at the end of the day, everyone in the world knows who the next Fed chair is going to be because Donald Trump has just touted it all over the place. But something crazy is happening, Zach, right? There's this independent signal that's happening out there, this idea around credibility weighed within this idea that's just totally kind of bass backwards. We're not used to seeing these kind of things, but it tells us if you take your crystal ball of gold and silver, it really tells you some underlying things that we're going to dive into today. That if you're a stacker, if you're a gold and silver buyer, if you're somebody who's doing this for the long term, you should perk up your ears today because the opportunity is like never before. So Zach, we're going to jump in today, right, about some of this news around when gold went up, right, and some of these things that are up on the screen today around, hey, the DOJ, right? Explain to folks or help them understand there was a probe into Jerome Powell, the current Fed chair. We know that him and Donald Trump are on the outs, right? It seems as though they're two seventh graders fighting over the same girl, right, in the middle school. That's what it seems like. But tell us, there was a probe, the Department of Justice probe into Powell, saying that he misappropriated funds in the way he did construction projects on Fed buildings, and magically that probe went away. And when it went away, two things happened. Warsh's he went to an 85 probability on places like Kalshi or, the prediction markets, right? It went to an 85% probability that he's going to become the next Fed chair. And that drove gold up. What are we seeing there? What are some of your input on that, Zach?
Which is really crazy because, well, by the way, number one, everybody should be really ticked that they dropped the probe, right? Like they should be. Hey. If you're an American, you should be ticked. I mean, there is an insatiable appetite to just spend your tax dollars anywhere and everything. So everybody should be ticked about that. But besides that, it is crazy because what in a normal era, when you have a Fed chair that's stepping down, another one coming in, everybody looks at what are the policies or what is the record of the incoming Fed chair. And that's usually what the market goes by. Well, Warsh he is very hawkish on high interest rates and very, very, very leery of inflation and certainly hyperinflation. So the market should have looked at that and said, okay, our new incoming Fed chair is really bullish on high interest rates. And so interest rates aren't going down. They're either going to stay where they're at or they're going to go up. Well, what happens in the market when interest rates go up? Well, you've got all of your bonds and treasuries. And so all the money moves to those higher yield instruments, right? Because the cash wants to go over there and live to make money off those higher interest rates. When interest rates come down, they flee that stuff and go to other places. So everybody should have looked at it and said, well, Warsh is going to he's going to raise interest rates. So our money needs to move over into higher yielding things because interest rates are going to be higher. But the problem is the central banking system is so fragile and has been upended so much by what Trump's been doing, is what the market really priced in that they thought was more important than the potential of higher interest rates was independence between the executive branch and the Fed chair. So what they looked at was if they drop the probe, then that means that the Fed chair, the Fed chair and the Federal Reserve really is independent and they can't get bullied by the executive branch. Because what everybody's afraid of is this is Trump's buddy, right? They're afraid he's going to come in and Trump is going to put his thumb on him and say, drop those interest rates. And the banks don't want the president of the United States to be able to have that much influence over monetary policy. So instead of pricing in what should have been priced in, they priced in something totally opposite, which is insane. It's insane.
Well, and I would say, right, I'll share this infographic for a minute. What it says to me that nobody's talking about, right? Like you and I are doing this because I'm just disgusted that this isn't all over Fox News and all over CNN and MSNBC today. We should all be scared to death, right? Like, we hardly ever fear monger on this program. It's not who we are, right? But I'm telling you, what's on the screen right now should be being shouted from the rooftops, and it's what it bore out this week in these markets. The structural debt trap, right? Like we actually now in 2026, we now have $1 trillion of interest owed a year in interest on our national debt. Okay, so in 2026, we have a $1 trillion interest payment on our debt. Do you know our whole defense spending, Zach, is less than 900 billion?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This is the real thing, but this is the crazy part. We have $1 trillion. We have 9.2 trillion of that debt has to, without exception, has to be refinanced in 2026. Well, when we financed it the first time, interest rates were less than 1%, and they range between 0.5 and 1.2. Okay, and that interest is $1 trillion a year, and now it has to be refinanced at the current interest rates. So this is the pickle for the new Fed chair, right? When Powell steps down, this is the pickle. You need to raise interest rates because of inflation, but you absolutely can't because it will crush the entire economy and the US dollar. Correct? So
yeah, 100%.
So here we are in this. Nobody's talking about the thing that matters most. We are about to experience hyperinflation like never before. Okay, because the thing that should happen is they should greatly raise interest rates. Literally, most real economists think upwards of 21%, Zach, but they can't because we can't restructure the debt. So when they don't raise the interest rates in order to restructure the debt, and they lower interest rates the remainder of the year, which is going to happen, the only way to offset that is to print more. What?
You got to print more U.S. dollars or higher taxes.
Yeah,
that's your only two options.
How that is, it's an election year. Nobody's going to come out and say, "Hey, we're going to raise taxes exponentially on you." So we're just going to see the erosion of the U.S. dollar at an exponential pace because of this. And so, like, I'll never forget, Zach. Yeah, go ahead. Your thought, and I'll come back to it.
Well, I was going to say this is every country, Josh. Every country that has lost their currency. This is the roadmap. Like Venezuela. Why? Because of this very thing. The only other option is to debase the dollar.
Yes.
Like devalue the dollar so much because you've printed so much that you can erase the debt. Like, and that's where Venezuela, Zimbabwe, the dinar, like all these different currencies. This is the exact roadmap.
I just tell you, like this week, I was a little disgusted, right? Just because everything in the media that came out about gold and silver and about this problem were superficial. It was like, oh, Trump and Powell are fighting. No, this is a debt problem, and the debt problem is so enormous that if you're not holding gold and silver, I'm just here to tell you, you don't have anything. You are in big trouble. If you're holding green bills in the bank, you are in big trouble. The day's coming. We already know what inflation is. We experience it every day with milk. We experience it with fuel. We experience it with bread. But it's about to get a whole lot worse in the remainder of 2026. And I don't even want to think about 2027, Zach, because if we can't restructure this debt for the U.S. government at an unbelievable interest rate, which we're a long ways from, it would literally mean the new Fed chair coming in and saying, Zach, we need to lower interest rates by not a point, or not a half a point, not a quarter of a point, but by 5 basis points. Can't happen. So we're in for it. What does that mean? That means that we will continue to see. We all were surprised when gold hit an all-time high in January, right? We got all excited and the world got excited and went, whoa, it came off. It's 16% under that today. Oh, guys, don't sit on the sidelines this time. You're about to miss out and not protect yourself. And so I just wish, Zach, I wish that there was more transparency and that we'd tell the American people and the world leaders, come out and say the truth. Like, this is a debt problem and it's an interest rate problem. And all of those people that hold gold and silver are going to win.
Yeah, well, and this is exactly why I say every red-blooded American should be absolutely infuriated that they dropped this investigation into Powell. Like, whether you like him or whether you don't like him should be irrelevant. What should matter to the American people is, what did you do with my tax dollars? And if there was salacious spending and wasting and frivolous spending of all this stuff, that's what contributes to all of this national debt, right? It's death by 1,000 cuts. If every department in the government has this insatiable desire to just spend money and there's no checks and balances and nobody ever gets in trouble for it, they just keep spending money. So go back to 2008. Like, I think every American should understand this, and most people don't. When I talk to people, they're like, "Oh, I don't even understand how the Fed works, and I don't understand the debt, and why does it matter? We can just keep printing money, right?" I want you to go back to 2008. Previously to 2008, there was a whole bunch of mortgages that were sold. They were like 5-in-1 ARMs, variable interest rates. So people could get a really low interest rate on their mortgage, right? Like 5-6%. But then what happened? So if you got a 5 or 6% interest rate and you can cover that fairly easily in your monthly budget in your household, let's say it's a $2,000 a month mortgage. Okay. Well, if you got a 6% interest rate at a $2,000 a month mortgage and you can pay it, great. If the government has a spending limit where the tax revenue can cover the nut, then great. But what happens when the interest rate raises and we have to refinance that debt? All of a sudden now, all the debt that America has, instead of being financed down here, it's financed up here. So if you had a home in 2008, and lots of you experienced this, who are a little older, if you had a $2,000 mortgage and you had a 6% interest rate, when those variable rates started going up, we saw as high as 12% interest rate. So it went from 6% to 12%. That means you went from a $2,000 a month payment to a $4,000 a month payment. Now what happens when you consistently can't make your $4,000 a month payment to the bank? What does the bank do? They come and take your home, right? Like, you don't get the privilege of just getting the money machine out, printing up money and taking it over and giving it to the bank to make the payment. But that's what the government does with the Federal Reserve, is they say, we need more money because we're irresponsible. The interest rate went up. We can now no longer cover the interest or the debt. We can't pay it. So print us more money. And then when you print more money, it floods the whole system, and that causes inflation on its own, right? Like, think about it as your own household. You should just be ticked. You should be ticked.
I'm glad you brought up 2008. I go back to 2007, and my uncle, who was a gold bug, came to me and said, "Josh, you've got to go buy gold right now." At the time, I want to say gold was $450 an ounce. I was a young entrepreneur. I needed every stinking penny I had to keep the businesses, keep all the plates spinning, and I wanted to. I believed him, but I couldn't go buy it, right? I thought I couldn't do it. By the way, man, if Sound.money had been available then, so I could have bought $200, right? But at the time, I thought, this is crazy. Well, 2008 happened, and sure enough, he was right? Like, gold went to 1,200 right then. People that held it were immune and safe from it. But at that time, he would tell me, "Hey, gold's going to go to $5,000 an ounce in the next couple of years." Well, he was off.
Like, you are insane.
I thought he was insane. Right? I thought he was insane. But he laid out all the principles of what you just said, right? That, hey, there's going to come a day where they can't outprint anymore. And when that happens, and and the runaway inflation happens, which we've experienced for the last since COVID, since the printing of the mass money of the COVID relief bills and the SIDL money and all the garbage that came with COVID, and now we find out all the fraud in California and Minnesota and all this garbage, right? You can't outprint it. But he used to say, when that day starts to come, gold will exponentially jump in blocks, right? Well, we experienced it in 2025, right? It jumped, it doubled, and almost tripled. And what you're laying out, Zach, is that we aren't even close.
Oh.
We're not even close to the top of this deal because the poor government, these idiots, mainly in the Fed, and the printing of this money, right? And what we do with defense spending in our country, like we're red-blooded Americans. We love the military. You and I, we love everything about it. We want to be the biggest badasses on the planet. We get it, but it comes at a cost, and we're about to experience the cost. So I mean, we usually don't get this passionate, but guess what? If you're sitting on the sidelines and you're not buying gold and silver, you are missing the boat. And
100%.
This time around, we're not going to miss. Like we have positioned ourselves, and all the people that follow us, they've positioned themselves in a way that they're going to win because they'll be taken care of. Win's a bad term. They'll actually just be protected because those that aren't protected are going to get steamrolled this time around.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so that's this week's gold and silver report. Man, I wish it was tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll know. I'm really interested. We'll take this up next week, but I'm really interested to see. Jerome Powell is going to go throwing Donald Trump and everybody else under the bus in his final remarks. There's no way he's not. Like I think he's going to say, Zach, we need to jack interest rates to the moon to save America. But nobody wants to hear that. No consumer wants to hear it, but it is the reality of all realities that without it, we're in for trouble unless you're holding precious metals. That's just the reality. So poor government decisions, they're probably not getting fixed in the next 6 months, are they? Like,
no politician wants to be the one. Everybody wants to kick the can down the road. And the problem is the politicians never want to be the one to rip the Band-Aid off and fix the problem. And at this point, I don't know that it can be fixed. And then the market, and when I say market, I'm talking about the central banking system, the big hedge funds, all those. It's like they have this 3-foot window or this 3-foot world that they live in, and they're not pricing in or thinking about the long term or the future. They're looking for immediate dividends and dollars today. So but the underlying what you just said, if you're smart enough to listen to the people that have been around a while, what you understand is the underlying problem that we have is not going away, and they can put all the Band-Aids on it they want, but over the long term, this is not going to end well. And so that is why you didn't see gold react in the way that most people thought it would, is because the long-term problem is there. It's like having a leaky roof and the leak shows up on the wall, and instead of going and fixing the leak, you just get new paint over it, right? You didn't fix the problem. And that's what every politician wants to do, is they just want to paint over it, and they just want more money and more spending for their state and for their constituents. So nobody wants to curb the spending, and nobody will curb the spending because they don't want to be the one to take away the social programs, right? And so they're just going to keep spending. It's just going to get worse and worse. And if you're holding precious metals, you are going to be insulated from that over the long term.
Well, and that's a good segue, right? Because at the end of the day, just like gold prices just like gold prices are institutional credibility, our relationships, like where we want to go for the rest of the day, Zach, our relationships in business depend largely on our success, and our relationships in business really are the basis of whether or not we win or lose in the world. We like to say that oftentimes, Zach, that in the business world, that most business owners, they feel alone, right? Like at the end of the day, no one really gets it. And a few people, you can really trust and understand what you're doing. And oftentimes the weight of it all is really difficult. We want to jump into this topic today about how business owners, even though you may feel alone, you're not alone, right? You've got to take advantage of in the space, and you got to get with other like-minded business people who who don't necessarily have any financial gain in your success or failure. And so, Zach, what is, I've heard you often say things like your net worth is only as big as your network. You've shared that before on the podcast. For the listeners, give a brief overview of what that means to you, and in this context of, if you're a business owner, you better find some like-minded sounding boards that you can talk to.
Yeah, I mean, in this context, you just can't sit in a vacuum by yourself, right? Because you will go crazy in your own head with all the different ideas that you have, and all of the different thoughts that you give yourself of this isn't going to work, or it's not working, or like all those types of different things. So you have to surround yourself with people who understand what you're going through, even if it's not in the same segment of business that you're in. You can't have conversations with people who have not at least dipped their toe into an entrepreneurial endeavor. Like, they just don't understand it. And so your network is really what your net worth is. If you take the 5 people that you associate with the most, you're the average of them. So if you go look at your bank account and you go take the 5 people that you associate with the most and you look at their bank accounts, you're probably about the average of those 5 people. So if you're spending a lot of time with people who don't understand business and don't understand what you're trying to do in the business world, then it's going to be really tough to really win, because there are days when you need someone who understands what you're going through to talk you off the cliff of abandoning your idea. And most people, you've heard what's the phrase? Everybody sees the shine, but they don't see the grind, right? It took me 10 years to become an overnight millionaire, overnight success, or whatever. I just had this conversation not too long ago with someone who they are young. They're like not even they're early 20s, and they're like, I just can't figure out, how you got this lifestyle and what you do, and like, I'm trying this and I'm trying that, and they're just like moving from idea to idea to idea, and they're not sticking with anything, because in the world today it's like microwave society. I got to have it now. And what they really need is they need to spend some time around people and build a network of people who have had success and had to go through all the hardships and the heartaches to get there. So they have a little bit of a frame of reference to go, oh, this is pretty normal to not have a business idea this morning and have $1 million in my bank account tonight, right? Like, it takes time.
It takes time, and I've always kind of lumped people into 3 different categories on this, right? If you're doing this right, you've got to have mentors and advisors. You gotta seek out mentors and advisors, and you gotta have some peers and collaborators, people you can work with, and then you gotta actually look forward to the future you, right? Like the rising star you, and what that actually looks like. But let's jump in for a sec, Zach, and I want to talk about, what does it mean to actually have a mentor and an advisor? If we're going to say everybody needs to have mentor and advisors, what are we actually talking about when we talk about that, right? In the sake of business, what is a mentor and an advisor?
Well, I always say never take advice from someone more messed up than you are. Right? Like, you have to find someone who's either done what you're trying to do or somewhat close to that. Because way too many people take advice from people who have never done anything, and all they are is critical about the idea, either because of jealousy or they just don't know, right? They don't know how to do it. So a mentor and an advisor is somebody who has been where you're trying to go and has at least seen what you're trying to get to, so that when you run into roadblocks and you need advice, that person can at least give you some advice from a frame of reference of, yeah, I've been there before, or I've seen this movie before. I know exactly what you're going through, right? This is what I did, or maybe you could try this. So a mentor is someone that you can look to as sort of like a roadmap, right? What did they do, or what advice could they give? And if you don't have that, it's really difficult because then you're just kind of doing it alone and you're sort of guessing. And there are some really smart people, by the way, who just kind of guess their way into things and it works out. But by and large, most people, they have somebody that they look up to that goes, this is what I want my future to be like. And so I'm going to pick this person's brain and try to figure out and deconstruct how did they build the life they're building so that I can build it. That to me is what a mentor is.
Yeah, and you don't have to go to somebody and say, "Hey, will you be my mentor? Will you mentor me?" Right? It really is as simple as picking somebody that you perceive has had some success in the field or in some arena that you're in. Um, it could be a like-minded business. It may just be that they're successful in their business, and you picking their brain, asking to take them to lunch, right? Where you lay out some of the challenges that you have and ask, "Hey, have you ever run into things like this?" Because what I found, we've been lucky enough, both you and I, to have many great mentors in business who are free with their thoughts and their experiences. And you and I, for the better part of now, I mean, I don't even know, Zach. There's probably for 20 years. Has there ever been a week that you haven't gone to lunch at least 2 days a week where somebody's wanting you to mentor them, right? They're asking you questions. That's the nature of entrepreneurialism. And so I would just say, right, I had the experience recently. Um, I thanked a former mentor of mine who's passed away. I thanked his son for his dad's mentorship this past week. He was a gentleman who very successful in business. He invented things like the vending machine. Almost all the vending machines that you've ever seen in the world, he invented, right? And he just, for one reason or another, Ray took me under his wing many years ago, and he would answer my questions, right? So I could call him. This is back, early days of cell phones. I could call him on the flip phone, and he would always answer, and he would answer a question for me. And then we'd go to lunch, and he would lay out for me, hey, just so you know, when I owned diet centers, I ran into this. He would say, I ran into this problem, and it's similar to what your problem is, and maybe this would work. Or when I had the vending machine business, I did this in manufacturing, and it worked. Hey, here's some pitfalls I ran into in manufacturing, and those are invaluable things for you and I. When and they're not hard. I've never had a mentor tell me no. Never had somebody when I've asked a genuine entrepreneur when I've asked for their guidance or ideas. I've never had them tell me. Have you run into? Is that with you too, Zach? Is that pretty common? Most entrepreneurs are willing to share ideas.
Yeah, I think most entrepreneurs are willing to help out right up until the point where they see that the person they're trying to pour into is unwilling to take any advice,
Uh,
right? I think
Coachable,
that's,
be coachable.
yeah, one of the keys, right? Is if you are going to go find a mentor and ask someone to like give time. By the way, anyone that is worth mentoring you is really, really busy.
Oh man.
So if you're not gonna like at least try to implement some of the things, and if you're not going to implement them, then they shouldn't be your mentor because obviously you don't think that they have anything valuable to say, right? But you got to be coachable too if somebody's going to try to pour into you, or they're just going to stop pouring into you.
Yeah, and I would say, we put on that infographic as well that, advisors, because advisors are very different. Advisors you can find anywhere in the world today through AI, through YouTube. They're people that they have advice to give and that might be very, very valuable for you, but there's no personal connection between you and them. But in the world we live in, you can receive a lot of amazing things to grow your business or your personal life with an advisor. I go back in time, Zach. Um, I later met the man, but he was an advisor to me for a decade before I ever met him. Um, when I was a young aspiring entrepreneur and just kind of starting to kick down the doors, I would listen to these audio tapes. This is before CD. Uh, for some of our listeners are going, "What's an audio
You're
tape?"
so old.
Oh yeah, but I had the 12 cassette series from Jim Rohn,
Jim Rohn, yeah.
and he was an advisor to me. We didn't know each other, but he gave great advice, and he did it in a digital format, right, on a cassette tape that I would stick in my cassette player as I would drive around. And I learned so much about the sales process from him. That's an advisor, and those are free all over the world now with the internet and with YouTube. And so that's the difference between a mentor and advisor. And there's millions of those out there for you and for everyone out there. So, Zach, what does it mean though? Like this other category that I put people in, of peers and collaborators, right? Like this is how you don't stand alone. Like what is a peer in business or a collaborator, somebody you're collaborating with on a project to try and get answers, like, and what has been your experience with using them to grow yourself or your business?
Well, when normally when you have problems in business, you're trying to solve some problem. There's usually some other business that's either working on that problem as well, or they're at least in that world. For example, if you're working on financing for your business and you can't get financing, well, who is going to be your peers or your collaborators? It's your banker, right? Or it's merchant processing, or it's so these are people in different segments of different industries that you have to interact with in order for your business to grow. So you bring them in to help collaborate on some of the problems that you're having. They're hoping that you're going to use them, right, as one of the vendors and use them as business. It may or may not end up that way, but you're trying to get advice from them on how to solve these problems because they might be the expert in that area. And your business, you're not a merchant processor, you're not a bank, or you're not in financing, right? But it affects your business. So you got to go find someone who is in that field to collaborate with, to get information with, to help you solve some of those problems, right? And peers could be other individuals who are in the same business segment as you. We have we have lots of other people that are competitors to us in some regard that we talk to quite often, and we find out what they're doing and what experiences they've had in the industry. They ask us questions, and so it's not always like this fierce comp. Yeah, we're competitors, right? We all want to beat each other, but we all also understand a rising tide lifts all boats. And so if there's some collaboration between you and even your competitors, then the whole space gets bigger and there's more pie for everybody to share.
Probably, I go back to, you and I have one of our very best friends in the world, is a competitor. He's a peer, but over the past 20 years, we have become more than friends. You make friends in this world, but you make some friends that are just part of your family from then on. And this individual, his name's David, and he's a competitor, right? We met as competitors. We did business as competitors, but we became what I would be considered best friends and collaborators, right? There's nothing in one of our business segments that we don't do before we don't consult with him and he with us. And we have no financial benefit from each other. And some of the greatest ideas we've ever received for him or for us have just been in the collaboration process with a peer in a competitive market space, competing with one another. But this is where we say real entrepreneurs don't stand alone. You're not alone. If you do it right, even your competitors can be one of the greatest sources of inspiration for you and become friends. Just, as an example, I love my experience with him, and so have you, but it's in this vein, right? As a competitor, but a peer. So you're not standing alone there. I want to jump now, Zach, to the last area that I kind of put people in this bucket, right? You don't stand alone, because if you do this right, the future you, right, you're a rising star. And if you can just understand that one of the greatest people you can talk to is your future self. And I know that sounds weird, right? Like, and I know that Zach and I are weird too. Okay. I talk to myself every day. I talk to myself in the truck. I talk to myself in the shower. I talk to my future self all the time. I know for some of you, you're going, what are you talking? They put people in the loony bin for that kind of stuff, Josh, right? But you got to look at your future self and see where you want to go. And you got to ask yourself, am I the kind of person that can get there? If I'm not, who can I team up with? Am I dreaming big enough, right? And am I dreaming big enough? Am I working right now hard enough to become the future version of myself that I need to, right? And you got to pump yourself up, right? You got to believe in your potential. You got to focus on your mission, and you got to build for your future, because nobody else is going to do it. And I know it sounds a little weird, but you never stand alone as an entrepreneur if you're willing to have honest conversations with your future self in the present about what you want to accomplish. Zach, am I weird? Am I weirdo?
Oh, you are 100% weird.
Okay.
But here's the thing. You gotta be weird. if you want to be different than everybody else. If you look around, if you're like, okay, that is really weird that you talk to yourself, then what I want you to do is I want you to look around at who you spend time with, what your relationships are, and what is your situation in life. Because if you're just like everybody else and doing what everybody else is doing, then guess what? That is going to be the end for you. Like, you are where you're going to be. So you have to be a little bit weird to be different than everybody else. Not everybody gets to do the things that entrepreneurs get to do, right? Like, so they're running fiber down my road right now. And it's interesting because I had this conversation with my my kids as we were driving down the road, right? I'm like, hey, I want you to look at something as we drive down the road here. And these guys are out with picks and shovels because you can't use heavy equipment because there's other utilities buried. So they have to use picks and shovels to dig these holes. And it's like they got to dig a hole 3 feet deep every it's like every 60 feet for miles and miles to run this fiber, right? So there's guys out there who are just using picks and shovels, and our soil here in Idaho is really rocky. It's not like great dirt, right? Well, the conversation I had with him is, you can either be the guy digging the hole, or you can be the guy that decides where the hole gets dug. But you have to decide which one you're going to be. Now, both can be happy, right?
Yeah.
But you have to decide which one you're going to be. And if you're going to be the guy that decides where the hole gets dug, then you're going to be a little bit weird and different than everybody else, because there's more guys using the picks and shovels than there is guys walking around saying this is where the hole goes. The guy that owns the company, right? So I think you're 100% right. You have to talk to yourself. In fact, this is so we loved a dirt bike, and last week or 2 weeks ago, we were down south on vacation. I took my son dirt biking, and we're always telling him, look where you want to go. And as you're riding a dirt bike, climbing a hill, going through the rocks or whatever, there's obstacles that are going to break your leg, or you're going to crash on, or whatever. If you look at those obstacles that you're afraid of, guess what? You're running into them, or that's where you're going. But if you look where you want to go, it's like those obstacles don't exist and you just end up there. So when Josh says he talks to himself, I yell at myself while I'm riding a dirt bike, because I'm like, gosh dang it, Zach, wait, you looked right at it, and then you smacked it, right? Like, ride your freaking bike. I was telling my son, he would crash on these things. I'd be like, it's because you were looking. He's like, no, Dad, I was looking ahead. I'm like, you couldn't have. You rode right into it. Like, you were looking at the wrong thing, right? So your thought process of, you have to see the future you where you want to be, and you have to keep that vision in your mind, and you have to talk your way there, because everybody else is going to try to talk you out of it. Like, that's just the honest truth.
What I would just say too, Zach, that everyone, you've talked about this before, everyone's got a little voice in their head, and that little voice is sometimes it kind of beats them up, tells them they can't accomplish what they want to do, and they can't amount to anything, or they're not going to win. And I'd just say this, right, in this vein, and this idea that you need to have mentors, that you need to have advisors, collaborators, peers. You need to go out and every week you need to take the opportunity to say, this week, who am I going to reach out to, and how am I going to strengthen my personal network in business? Who's the potential mentor or advisor or peer that I'm going to talk to this week? And then you can't listen to that little voice. You have to just pick up the phone and do it, or send the text message, because what I'm here to tell you is, you and I have never turned someone down when they asked, right? That's not in the nature of a real entrepreneur. And they only stand on the shoulders of those that came before them. So they recognize that the next person has to have someone like them as well. So I would just say, don't let that little voice beat you up. Just do it, right? So kind of a challenge this week: go out in the marketplace, pick a mentor, somebody that you can reach out to and ask some questions to. Pick a new online advisor you can listen to. Maybe we're your online advisor, for crying out loud, right? Like, I know we suck, but I've got 1 or 2 nuggets you might be able to pull out, right, as an advisor. Or pick a peer this week in your same space, or what you're trying to accomplish, or a coworker, and brainstorm about ideas and things that you want to accomplish in your business or in your personal life. And then do us a favor, drop us a comment, tell us how it went, share it with somebody else. Because at the end of the day, we just want you to absolutely know, as an aspiring entrepreneur, as somebody that's out there trying to win, you absolutely do not stand alone. And you never will in business, right? If you do it right, you'll never stand alone. There will always be somebody there, a mentor, an advisor, a peer, a collaborator, or yourself, that will not let you down. But the minute you feel that way, you got to reach out. Zach, I'm going to give you the last word today on our business topic, and then I'll give a last word on gold and silver. Fair enough?
Perfect. Winners look for other winners, right? So if you're trying to win and you're trying to make moves and you're serious about it, then people who are winning in their space, they're going to recognize that in you, right? They're going to see something. And what most entrepreneurs want, or what most other business owners want, is they want someone else to win. They know they're not going to be here forever, right? Like, we know we're not going to be here forever. Why do you pour into your children? Because you want them to be better than you were. And so most people who are worth having as a mentor, if you're worth being mentored because you're at least trying and putting in some effort, then winners are going to find winners, right? And they're going to be willing to try to help you. And if you don't have someone that you're like, oh, that person, I really want them to be my mentor, and you don't know them, you have no connections to them or whatever, like, you got to start somewhere, right? Start with a book, start reading business principles about what you're trying to learn, start implementing those, becoming better. And guess what? You're going to end up in the network somewhere of this individual. And if you're talking to people and you're looking for mentors or other people that are being successful, you're going to run into someone who's probably not accomplished quite what that person's accomplished, but they at least know him. And now they can make a connection, right? And now you can introduce yourself to him and try to be mentored by him. So don't quit on it. Just keep trying to find the connection to get to that person that you're trying to be mentored by, and then be a good, what the word, mentee? Is that the word? Be worth mentoring, right? And you'll go some awesome places. But just believe you can do it, and just keep fighting for the dream.
So I love what you said there, because what that really all boils down to me really is really simple. It's legacy, right? Mentors are willing to share because they want to leave a legacy. Parents pour so much into their children and their grandchildren because they want to leave a legacy. Those being mentored, those that are seeking this advice, what they want to do is they want to eventually apply the principles and leave a legacy. And at the end of the day, the only way that I believe we can leave a legacy when it comes to on the financial side of things is if we utilize the precious metals or the rare earth things of this earth, right? And it just so happens you and I are heavily involved in gold and silver. We start every week of this podcast out about our takes on gold and silver because it's a space that we absolutely believe in. And it's with pure passion, right? And it's because of this legacy idea. Just like we want to leave a legacy in business, we want to leave a legacy financially. And if you pay attention this week to what happens with the FOMC announcements and probably what will be Jerome Powell's last statements as Fed chair, you'll come to realize that the most powerful way that you can leave a legacy for your family today is to utilize gold and silver. That's just the reality. It's played out that way now for 5,000 years. And I'd encourage all of our listeners, share with somebody this week the SoundMoney wallet. Like, this is an impassioned plea, right? Zach and I, we really believe that your money's going to get inflated away more than it has. It has been destroyed, but we haven't seen anything yet with this debt and with this upcoming restructuring of that debt. We haven't experienced anything as a people. And because of that, we would just hope that any of our listeners would share a very simple way for people to go create a free account at SoundMoney and for actually buy some gold and silver. It will make all the difference. And I don't say that because we're founders of the company. I say it because without it, you're not going to win. It's just the reality. And because of that, we can't wait to see how we can continually change the lives and leave a legacy, Zach, for tens of thousands, if not millions, of our friends and listeners around the world, because these things matter and they will matter for future generations. And so in an effort to leave a legacy financially and in business, we we just want you to know that we absolutely love getting with you for a few minutes each week and sharing some of these principles and some of these ideas. And we can't wait to see you next week. Zach, any last words?
Yep, no, to buy some gold and silver. I'm telling you, it'll be worth it in the future. Like and share the video wherever you're looking at this on whatever platform. Share it with somebody if you found something that was valuable or you think it could help somebody.
Appreciate it. You guys have an awesome week. Can't wait to see you next week on the Sound Money Sound Principles podcast. See ya.
See you guys.